Hey guys, I'm back with another Camilla tutorial. This time we're going to be working on the bodice. I figured I'd do this one next because it was one of the most frustrating and difficult to figure out parts of this cosplay, so I figured I'd get this out there for you guys so you could see what my process was. The patterning process is a little bit easier with some help, but you can do it on your own if necessary. Start by wrapping your entire torso in saran wrap. Don't worry about covering your chest, we'll make a separate pattern for that later. But be sure to cover up to the highest point that you want the bodice to go, underneath the armpits and all the way up the back. I made mine high enough to where it would cover where the band of my bra would go around my ribcage. Be sure to stock up on masking tape because you're gonna need a lot of it if you're gonna do this the way that I did. Next, start covering all of the saran wrap area with masking tape. Make sure you're not taping this on as tight as possible. You want this to be the exact same comfort level that it's going to be when you're actually wearing it. So make sure you have room to breathe and like move and stretch and bend. It should be snug, but not to the point where breathing is difficult. Next, draw a line down the center to start sketching out your pattern. Also draw a line underneath the cups of where your bra would go. We're going to add those in after. Sketch out a basic idea of what you want the bodice pattern to look like. This is basically just so you know how thick you're going to want each section to be. Not so much that you're getting it perfect the first time, because it's so much harder once you get the pattern off to understand what it's going to look like when it's on your body. For now, we're going to omit the very bottom layer of the bodice. Since it's not tight to the body and it juts away from the hips unlike the rest of it, we're not going to be able to pattern it using the masking tape method. So we're going to add that in later on in the fabrication process. Now have someone help cut you out of your pattern and free yourself from masking tape prison. Then finalize the sketch of your bodice pattern and be sure to try it on and off during this process so you know exactly how it's going to look like when you're wearing it. The next step is layering, and this is probably the most complicated part of this tutorial. It was so important to me that my bodice had actual physical visible layers. I didn't just make the shape of a bodice and then put like a skeleton layer of all the trim around it. I wanted it to actually look like armor. So in order to do that, we have to separate each layer of our design. Start off by numbering each section of the pattern so that way we don't lose track of what order everything goes in. I just used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down the middle, and then on the sides I used 1, 2, 3 L and 1, 2, 3 R. Be sure to draw hash marks across 2 layers in order to keep track of where they need to line up. This way you can maintain the symmetry of the design when you go to assemble it. Then carefully cut out each section of the pattern. So right now we just have a bunch of separate pieces. In order to get this layered effect, we need to extend each piece of the pattern so they can fit on top of each other, like a layered effect. Start off by darkening the outline of the top of each piece. This is going to help us keep track of where this piece should be visible and what should be tucked underneath the other pieces. Next, I double-sided masking tape off of the top of each piece. This will make our piece broader so that the layers on top and on the sides have something to glue onto while still maintaining the original pattern. Then make sure to draw back over where the line where the original pattern is. Here I'm trimming off the extra edges, but as I'll show later, I ended up needing to extend it on the sides as well. So as you can see, this now allows us to maintain our original pattern design, but giving it a layered dimensional effect. Continue these steps for the rest of the center pattern pieces. So now as you see here, we need to accommodate for the long side layers overlapping on top of the center layers. So now we'll have to extend the sides of each center piece as well. The bottom 2 side layers also need to be extended since they overlap each other. lastly, the very top side layer doesn't need to be extended at the top at all, but it needs a little tiny side flap that's going to go underneath the very top centerpiece. And this is what your layering should look like once you're done. It's almost like you're weaving the different layers one on top of the other. You don't have to do this, but I decided to tape together my pattern just to see if it had a little bit of flexibility. Now you'll need to buy a bra that you're willing to sacrifice to this cosplay. To pattern the armored cups for the bra, tape off each cup with masking tape. Then carefully remove it and flip it inside out in order to double side it with masking tape. This was the exact shape that I wanted for my bodice cups, but if you want to do any modifying, this is the point where you should do it. I wanted my bodice to be thin so that it wouldn't make me look bulkier than I actually am, but I also wanted it to be sturdy so that it wouldn't bend or rip when wearing it all day at a convention. I decided that 2mm foam would be too thin for this project and 6mm foam would be too thick. So those are both the standard sizes of foam that are sold in my area. So instead, I decided to make my own 4mm foam by gluing sheets of 2mm foam together. Yes, this was tedious and probably unnecessary. If you don't already have a bunch of 2mm foam lying around, definitely skip this and buy some online. But if buying online is not going to be an option for you, gluing 2 sheets of 2mm foam is totally a thing, and just join the Suffer Squad with me and do what I did. So once all your foam is ready, cut out all your pieces in 4mm EVA foam. Next, we have to transfer all the original size of the patterns onto the pieces of foam that we just cut out. So all I did was cut a slit right down the center and then fold it over to where the original pattern started and traced it onto the foam. Continue to do this for all of the pieces and be sure to transfer any of the little hash marks that you put on there to make sure that everything lines up correctly. For the cups, I used 6mm foam. So now we need to make this foam sheet from a flat surface into something curved that we can trace our pattern onto. In order to do that, we're going to heat up our piece with a heat gun and then stretch it over something round. I used a glass bowl that was around my cup size. You can see the foam is starting to get a little bend in it. Keep repeating these steps until the foam is round enough to trace your pattern onto it. Then after you cut them out, you can finalize the shape by hitting it with the heat gun again and pushing it into the bowl and stretching it around. Then I made a basic zigzag trim for the border of the cups. And to make the gold trim for the bottom of each layer, I just traced along the very bottom of each pattern piece, and I measured about 1/4 inch border above it. I made all of these border layers just out of 2mm foam. Painting is pretty straightforward for this project. Plastidip will seal and prep your foam for paint. I used about 4 or 5 coats, and then I sprayed them with a few layers of black spray paint. Don't overdo it with the spray paint because this is a piece that's going to be flexing. It's very tight to your torso. You don't want to risk putting on too many layers and then the paint will start to crack. I definitely learned this the hard way, so take my advice. And I looked forever for the perfect gold for this cosplay. Everything was either like too shiny or too bright or too yellowy of a gold. So this one that I found from Rust-Oleum was probably the best one I could have found. And then let your pieces dry for ideally a couple days. If you use something like contact cement onto spray paint too quickly, then it's gonna have a chemical reaction and really like mess with the layers. Now make sure everything is lined up perfectly symmetrical, exactly how you want it. Even the littlest tilt can completely throw off the design since it's such a symmetrical piece. Then make tiny little pencil marks so you know where you should put the glue, that way you know where everything lines up. Then use contact cement to glue all of the center layers together and the long layers that connect to them. For the center layers, we're not going to glue them together at all except for where they meet the center pieces in the front and then where they meet up in the back. Everything along the sides should remain just flexible. I used a zipper to attach everything in the back, so measure along the back of your bodice in order to determine what length zipper you're going to need. Then I bought some cheap black fabric and I measured out 2 strips that were 3 inches in width and then the same length of the zipper that I used. Then coat the fabric on each side of the zipper and the inside of the bodice with contact cement. Great, now you're ready to glue in the zipper. Haha, just kidding. You accidentally bought a zipper that doesn't separate at the bottom and you have to redo all the work that you just did. So once you get that all sorted out, just inch by inch slowly press it into the bodice. Now that the main base of the bodice is done, we can add the very bottom layer of the bodice. To do this, I just double-sided some masking tape all along the bottom. Bet you guys would have never guessed that I was about to use masking tape again. Use a ruler to make sure that it's even all the way around. Then just repeat the same process that we did with all the other layers, including extending it from the top. Then glue it on with contact cement. The last thing we need to do is give something for the cups to attach to, so I just quickly measured out a layer of 2mm foam. Glue the cups in with contact cement, and once it dries, you can permanently glue the bra into your bodice. And that is it for this tutorial. Let me know if you guys have any questions and what part of this cosplay you'd like to see next. Thanks for watching.